It was the last morning of her life, January 24th, 1948. A cold dawn broke over Kraków, Poland, and inside a stone prison courtyard, a woman who had once controlled the fate of 500,000 people was screaming, clawing, begging. The same hands that had signed death lists, ripped children from their mothers' arms, and beaten prisoners to the ground. Those hands were now shaking as guards dragged her across the frozen cobblestones toward the gallows. Her name was Maria Mandl. Prisoners once whispered it in terror. They called her one thing above everything else: the Beast. If you're new to Nazi history, this is exactly the kind of story we uncover. The real, documented truth about the people who ran the most horrific machine in human history. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. We go where most channels won't. Now, let's go back to the beginning. March 12, 1938. German troops crossed into Austria without a single shot fired. No resistance, no battles, just crowds lining the streets, cheering, waving flags, throwing flowers as church bells rang across the country. For most Austrians, it looked like celebration. But underneath the noise, something darker was spreading. Quietly, quickly, through Jewish homes, through families with the wrong political backgrounds, through anyone the new regime had already marked as an enemy. Jobs vanished overnight. Old loyalties became dangerous. And for those willing to serve without asking questions, doors suddenly swung wide open. Among the millions of lives reshaped by that single day was a young Austrian woman from a small village. A woman nobody had ever heard of. That woman would go on to become one of the most feared human beings in the entire Nazi concentration camp system. Her name was Maria Mandl. She was born on January 10, 1912, in the village of Münzkirchen, a quiet, unremarkable place in what was then Austria-Hungary. Her family was Catholic, respected in the local community, and politically connected to the Christian Social Party, which openly opposed the Nazis. Her father, Franz, was a master shoemaker. Her mother, Anna, was a homemaker who struggled with depression and suffered at least one serious breakdown during Maria's childhood. Mandl's education was cut short at age 12, pulled from school to help with farm work, as was common in rural Austria at the time. She later graduated from a Catholic boarding school, but finding steady work proved difficult. She drifted, working as a domestic servant in Switzerland, then returning to Austria as a chambermaid in Innsbruck, before coming back home to care for her aging parents. For a while, things seemed to stabilize. She found steady work at the local post office. She got engaged to a soldier. Her future looked modest, but it looked like a future. Then the Anschluss happened, and it destroyed everything she had. Because her family had ties to the anti-Nazi Christian Social Party, Mandl lost her job. Her fiancé broke off their engagement. He couldn't afford to be associated with someone whose family had the wrong politics in a country that now demanded total loyalty to Hitler. In a matter of weeks, Maria Mandl had lost her income, her partner, and her place in society. She had a choice: fade into obscurity or find a way into the new order. She chose the new order. In September 1938, Mandl left Austria and moved to Munich to live with her uncle, who worked as a police officer. She hoped he could help her get a position in the police force, but no positions were available. Instead, he pointed her towards something else: a guard position at Lichtenberg concentration camp in eastern Germany. She would later claim she took the job simply because it paid more than nursing. She claimed she knew nothing about what happened inside concentration camps. Those words would ring hollow at her trial, because within weeks of starting at Lichtenberg, Maria Mandl was not just participating in the system, she was thriving in it. On October 15, 1938, she began her first shift as a camp guard. She swore loyalty to the Nazi Party and to Adolf Hitler. She underwent ideological training alongside her cousin, Maria Gruber, who quit in disgust after witnessing the violence. Maria Mandl did not quit. She leaned in. Survivor testimonies from Emily Noy and Lena Haag describe what happened next. Mandl began beating prisoners, whipping them, forcing them through punishing physical drills. In one documented incident, she struck a prisoner repeatedly with a metal key until the woman lost consciousness, then dragged her body across the camp and threw her into solitary confinement. She was just getting started. On May 15, 1939, Mandl was transferred to Ravensbrück, the main women's concentration camp in the Nazi system, where more than 130,000 women were imprisoned during the war, the majority of whom did not survive. At Ravensbrück, the woman prisoners had quietly nicknamed the Beast fully revealed herself. She patrolled the camp with a dog. If a prisoner caught her attention for the wrong reason, if she simply disliked the look of someone, she released the dog. Prisoners were torn apart while she watched. She always carried a whip, using it freely, on any body part, at any moment. Roll calls became psychological warfare. In the early spring and autumn, when frost covered the ground, Mandl banned prisoners from wearing shoes, except during work hours. Women stood barefoot from 4 in the morning through the entire roll call, sometimes until 6 a.m. If an older prisoner slipped a scrap of paper under her bare feet for even a moment of relief from the frozen ground, Mandl punished her with a savage beating, then had her dragged to a dark cell. On one occasion, Mandl kicked and beat an elderly prisoner in a corridor so violently that the woman collapsed onto the stone floor. Mandl did not stop. She kept kicking until the woman was dead. When prisoners heard her footsteps coming, word passed through the barracks in urgent whispers. "Mandl is coming." Everyone fell silent. Everyone went still. Because if she noticed you, you might not survive the day. In 1942, the SS expanded the camp system dramatically. A large women's camp was established at Auschwitz-Birkenau, and Maria Mandl was promoted and transferred there as its chief guard. SS Lagerführerin, the highest position any woman could hold in the entire Nazi camp hierarchy. Her only superior was Commandant Rudolf Höss. Everyone else answered to her. At Birkenau, Mandl's power was essentially absolute. She controlled every female guard. She controlled access to food, shelter, punishment, and death. Survivor Anita Lasker-Wallfish described what happened at the front gate during prisoner lineups. If a prisoner made direct eye contact with Mandl, that prisoner was removed from the line and killed. Not for any crime, not for any rule violation, simply for meeting her gaze. She signed death lists every week. Historians believe those signatures made her directly complicit in the deaths of approximately 500,000 people. She showed particular brutality toward Jewish prisoners and Polish women. She tore infants and children from their mothers' arms and sent them to be murdered. When mothers tried to follow their children, screaming, reaching, fighting, Mandl beat them into the ground. And yet, in one of the most disturbing contradictions of the entire Holocaust, it was Maria Mandl who organized the Women's Orchestra of Auschwitz in 1943. She hand-selected prisoners with musical talent and formed an orchestra that played as other prisoners marched to forced labor, returned from exhausting shifts, or were led to the gas chambers. Concerts were held every Sunday for SS personnel. A small number of women survived the war specifically because they were in that orchestra. While 500,000 others were killed, music played on, forced, hollow, and grotesque, under Mandl's command. That is who she was. Not a raving madwoman, a woman capable of organizing culture and coordinating mass murder in the same afternoon. As Soviet forces advanced in late 1944, Mandl was transferred to Mühldorf, a subcamp of Dachau where prisoners were literally worked to death, constructing underground factories for German jet aircraft. Conditions were catastrophic. Food was almost non-existent. Death was constant. During this period, Mandl began a relationship with Walter Adolf Langleist, the commandant of the Mühldorf camp. When Allied forces closed in during the spring of 1945, Mandl and Langleist fled together. She eventually returned to Münzkirchen, her birthplace. But her own father refused to let her through the door. He knew what she had done. She sought refuge with her sister instead. On August 10, 1945, American military police arrested her. She was interrogated at the former Dachau site and then extradited to Poland. The Auschwitz trial opened in Kraków on November 24, 1947. 44 SS personnel stood accused. Maria Mandl was one of only 5 women brought before the tribunal. Survivor after survivor took the stand. Testimony after testimony described the beatings, the selections, the death lists, the children ripped from their families. At first, Mandl denied everything. Then, piece by piece, confronted with her own signatures on hundreds of death lists, she began to confess. On December 22, 1947, the Polish Supreme National Tribunal found her guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced her to death by hanging. Mandl fought for her life. She begged for clemency. She filed appeals and requests that reached Polish President Bolesław Bierut, who rejected every single one. In the days before her execution, she wept in her cell. She prayed. She withdrew into silence. January 24, 1948. 7:32 in the morning. She was the last of the group to be executed that day, fifth in line, and she had likely watched the four men before her be hanged. By the time the guards came for her, she knew exactly what was coming. She did not go quietly. She screamed, she fought, she clawed at the guards as they dragged her across the prison courtyard toward the gallows. The guards, reportedly intoxicated by that hour of the morning, laughed, taunted her, and mocked her as they pulled her across the stones. The woman who had terrorized thousands was now being ridiculed by the people escorting her to her death. And then, at the very last moment, she stopped struggling. She closed her eyes, and in Polish, she spoke her final words, Polska żyje. Poland lives. At 7:32 a.m., the execution was completed. Hours after her death, Mandl's body was transported to the Jagiellonian University Medical College in Kraków, where it was used for medical study for 6 weeks. On March 6, 1948, she was buried in an unmarked wooden box in Rakowicki Cemetery. Her father never requested her remains. He knew what his daughter had done, and he wanted no part of it. Her mother had already died, but while she lived, she prayed for Maria's soul. No prayer could undo 500,000 deaths. No grave marker was carved. No family came to claim her. The beast of Auschwitz was buried the way her victims had been discarded, quietly in the ground, forgotten by the people who had once called her family. Maria Mandl's story is not just history. It is a warning about what human beings are capable of when they are handed power over other human beings and told that cruelty is a virtue. If this video opened your eyes, hit the like button right now. It helps more people find this content and learn the truth about what happened. Subscribe to Nazi History so you never miss a single upload. We cover the stories that most channels are afraid to touch. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And share this video with someone who needs to know this history. We'll see you in the next one.